The 1,980 seconds gave us some of the biggest sci-fi blockbusters of all time. But here's the secret most people forget. Not every great sci-fi flick became a classic. Some slipped through the cracks, overshadowed by bigger names, yet still pack the same punch decades later. What if I told you the most daring, weird, and unforgettable sci-fi visions of the 80 seconds weren't always box office champs? Let's uncover the forgotten gems that refuse to fade away. Enemy Mine, 1985. A storm-wrecked planet, jagged cliffs, alien skies, and two bitter enemies forced into the same survival nightmare. That's Enemy Mine, and if you've never seen it, you're missing one of the boldest sci-fi stories of the decade. On paper, it looked simple. Dennis Quaid as Davidge, a human pilot, and Louis Gossett Jr. as Jariba, a reptilian alien. Both crash land during a war, both trained to hate, but both left with only one option: cooperate or die. At first, it plays like a classic standoff. The human sneers, the alien spits insults, and every scene feels like it might explode into violence. But then the real struggle takes over. Hunger, cold, storms that rip across the landscape. Slowly, their rivalry shifts. They stop seeing enemies and start seeing another soul just trying to survive. By the time Jariba entrusts Davidge with his child, the film has turned into something profound, a story about empathy in a universe where hate was supposed to win. When it premiered, audiences didn't get it. They wanted fast ships and flashy fights, not quiet conversations about survival and kinship. Critics dismissed it as slow, but time has flipped the verdict. Watch it now, and you'll see a parable that feels eerily modern. In an age defined by division, this film whispers something braver. Sometimes the most human thing you can do is embrace the so-called enemy, forgotten by most, yet unforgettable once you've seen it. Life Force 1985. You want bold? Try Life Force. Directed by Tobe Hooper, the fat-excitating that is Exhibitos, the guy behind Poltergeist, this movie doesn't play it safe. The setup is cosmic, a spaceship drifting near Halley's Comet, where astronauts discover three perfectly preserved beings. They bring them back to Earth. Big mistake. What unfolds is not just science fiction, it's gothic horror tangled with end-of-the-world spectacle. Critics didn't know what to call it. A vampire story in space? A doomsday thriller with supernatural undertones? Maybe both, maybe neither. But what everyone remembers is the imagery. London crumbling under chaos. Patrick Stewart, in an early role, possessed by an otherworldly force, and Matilda May's alien presence, mesmerizing and terrifying all at once. The movie throws everything at you. Cosmic dread, eerie silence, and wild energy that refuses to follow the rules. When it hit theaters, audiences were baffled. Too strange, too ambitious, too much of everything. But that's exactly why it's aged so well. While other films of the decade played it safe, Life Force swung for the fences. Today, it feels like a cult masterpiece. Not polished, not perfect, but fearless in its vision. It's proof that sci-fi doesn't always need to be logical to be legendary. It just needs the guts to show you something you've never seen before. The Hidden 1987. A red Ferrari tears through Los Angeles, bullets spraying from the window. The driver? Yesterday, he was just an ordinary guy. Today, he's unstoppable. That's the hook of The Hidden, and it's only the beginning. The truth is, he's not even himself anymore. An alien parasite has taken over, moving from one host to another, leaving wreckage in its wake. What makes The Hidden special is the way it mashes genres. At first glance, it looks like an action-heavy crime thriller, complete with car chases, explosions, and shootouts straight out of an 80 seconds blockbuster. But underneath, it's a sci-fi nightmare about identity, control, and the terrifying idea of being used as a shell for something you can't fight. Kyle MacLachlan, years before Twin Peaks, plays an FBI agent with a secret of his own, hunting the creature with chilling precision. Released in the shadow of giants like Predator and RoboCop, this film didn't get the spotlight it deserved. Yet, rewatch it today and you'll notice how far ahead it was. The pace never lets up. The paranoia feels ripped from the X-Files before the X-Files even existed, and its concept, a force moving unseen through ordinary people, is as unsettling now as it was then. The Hidden didn't rewrite the rules, but it definitely bent them in ways that stick with you long after the credits roll. Space Hunter, Adventures in the Forbidden Zone, 1983. If you thought the 80 seconds had no room for pure pulp, think again. Space Hunter. Adventures in the Forbidden Zone was released during peak Star Wars mania, complete with 3D gimmicks to draw audiences in. On the surface, it looks like a budget knockoff. But dig in, and you'll find something grittier, stranger, and way more fun than you'd expect. Peter Strauss stars as Wolf, a mercenary sent to rescue 3 women kidnapped by alien slavers. He's no polished hero. His ship is rusty, his patience is short, and his only companion is a sarcastic android. Enter a teenage Molly Ringwald as Nikki, a scavenger who crashes into his mission with sass and resilience. Together, they trudge through mutant swamps, desert biker gangs, and junkyard landscapes that look straight out of a fever dream. And then there's the villain, Overdog. Half human, half machine, grotesque in design, and unforgettable in presence. Critics at the time wrote the movie off as a bargain bin Mad Max. Theaters didn't give it love either. But here's the twist. Watch it today, and it's like a lost comic book brought to life. The production design is raw, practical effects ooze character, and its world feels grimy in all the right ways. Space Hunter may not have won box office glory, but it carved out something even better: cult status. A reminder that sometimes the scrappiest films are the ones that stick. Night of the Comet, 1984. A neon-lit sky, cheers in the streets, and a comet passing Earth for the first time in 65 million years. That's the opening of Night of the Comet, and it lulls you into a false sense of wonder. By morning, the city is silent. Clothes lie in piles. Dust swirls where people once stood. Humanity, it seems, has vanished. At the heart of this story are 2 sisters, Regina and Samantha. They survive thanks to a stroke of luck, but survival is just the start. Imagine Valley girls with machine guns, roaming shopping malls, blasting music, and fighting off strange survivors. On the surface, it looks campy, even ridiculous. But underneath the bubblegum gloss lies a sharp sci-fi tale. Director Tom Eberhardt crafted a mix of comedy, horror, and apocalypse that still feels unique. What makes it endure isn't just the quirky charm. It's the way it reflects real anxieties of the time. Nuclear fears, isolation, and the question of who you can trust when the world collapses. Critics weren't sure what to label it: parody, teen flick, or survival thriller, so it slipped into obscurity. But its influence can be felt decades later, in everything from Buffy the Vampire Slayer to Zombieland. Watch it now, and you'll see why it's more than a forgotten oddity. It's a time capsule of neon fashion, arcade culture, and a rare 80-second sci-fi film with 2 strong, witty leads who carry the chaos on their shoulders. Night of the Comet didn't just predict the end of the world, it made it fun. Outland 1981. Forget glossy spaceships and laser battles. Outland is as grounded as science fiction gets. Directed by Peter Hyams, this is High Noon in Space, and the comparison fits like a glove. Sean Connery plays William O'Neill, a weary lawman assigned to a mining colony on Jupiter's moon Io. At first, it seems routine. Keep order, mediate. Disputes, file reports. But then the workers start dying in strange, violent ways. Officials shrug it off. O'Neill doesn't. What unfolds is less about aliens and more about corruption. O'Neill uncovers that the deaths aren't accidents. They're tied to corporate greed, corner cutting, and a sinister cover-up. The more he digs, the lonelier he becomes. Deputies abandon him, miners look the other way, and the company wants him silenced. The suspense ratchets up until O'Neill is standing completely alone against a system that thrives on silence. The atmosphere is unforgettable. The mining station feels claustrophobic, industrial, drenched in shadows and grime. Jerry Goldsmith's score pulses with tension. Connery's performance strips away the suave Bond persona and delivers something raw. A man exhausted by compromise, but unwilling to bend when it counts. Upon release, Outland was dismissed as too slow and too derivative. It was buried under the excitement of Raiders of the Lost Ark. But time has rebranded it as one of the most intelligent sci-fi thrillers of the decade. It's not about futuristic gadgets. It's about integrity, greed, and the cost of standing alone. In an era still defined by corporate power, Outland feels as sharp as ever. Starman, 1984. When people think of John Carpenter, they picture masked killers and foggy nightmares. What they don't expect is tenderness. Yet Starman is exactly that, a love story wrapped in a sci-fi road trip. It begins with a light streaking across Wisconsin skies. That light takes form in the home of a grieving widow, Jenny, played by Karen Allen. Her shock? The alien looks exactly like her late husband. The alien, portrayed with remarkable innocence by Jeff Bridges, isn't here to conquer. He's stranded, searching for a way home, while government agents close in to capture him. Jenny is forced into an uneasy journey across America with this strange visitor who speaks awkwardly, moves like a child, yet sees beauty in everything we overlook. Bridges' performance is so delicate, so uncanny, that he earned an Oscar nomination, a rare feat for a sci-fi role. What makes Starman endure is its heart. It's not about explosions or spectacle, it's about connection. Jenny slowly shifts from fear to compassion, while the alien marvels at traffic lights, road signs, and the smallest wonders of humanity. Their bond grows, not because of fate, but because grief and hope find each other in the unlikeliest of forms. At the box office, audiences were confused. Carpenter fans wanted horror. Romance fans didn't know what to make of the alien angle. But decades later, it has emerged as one of his most beautiful works. Starman isn't about first contact, it's about second chances. And sometimes, that's the kind of story sci-fi tells best. Saturn 3-1980. Talk about a movie that was doomed before it even began. Saturn 3, starring Kirk Douglas and Farrah Fawcett, looked like it had everything. Futuristic design, a claustrophobic setting, and a towering robot called Hector. But, behind the scenes, chaos reigned. The original director was fired, rewrites piled up, and what was supposed to be a sleek blockbuster turned into something far stranger. The setup is simple. Two scientists live in isolation on a Saturn moon outpost. Their fragile peace shatters when a new commander, played with icy menace by Harvey Keitel, arrives with Hector, an experimental robot. Of course, Hector isn't just a machine. Programmed with parts of Keitel's unstable mind, it spirals into menace, and the isolated outpost becomes a trap. Here's the twist. Critics savaged it. Audiences stayed away. For years, Saturn III was written off as clumsy pulp. But rewatch it now, and it plays like a fever dream of late 70 seconds and early 80 seconds anxieties. The sets drip with metallic menace, the tension between the trio simmers with unease, and Hector remains a terrifying piece of design. Is it flawed? Absolutely. But that's exactly why it sticks. Saturn III feels less like a polished studio picture and more like a weird sci-fi nightmare you can't shake. Over time, it has built cult status. Cherished not because it's perfect, but because it dares to be odd. Sometimes broken films hold the most lasting power, and this one is proof. Altered States, 1980. If you want a film that makes you question reality itself, look no further. Altered States is Ken Russell at his wildest, and that's saying something. The story follows Dr. Edward Jessup, a scientist obsessed with exploring the limits of human consciousness. Played by William Hurt in his debut role, Jessup experiments with isolation tanks and mind-bending substances until his body, and maybe his very DNA, begins to change. The imagery is staggering. Hallucinations of swirling lights, primal visions of evolution, and sequences that feel ripped from dreams blur the line between science and madness. Russell, known for his over-the-top style, leans fully into the surreal. Religious iconography, kaleidoscopic visuals, and disturbing transformations pile on until you're not sure if Jessup is evolving into something new or unraveling into nothing. When it premiered, critics were divided. Some hailed it as genius, others dismissed it as nonsense. The original writer even pulled his name from the film in protest. But what no one could deny was its audacity. Few films dared to ask questions this big. How far can science go before identity itself collapses? What's left of you if the boundaries of body and mind dissolve? Over 4 decades later, Altered States still hits hard. It's messy, it's unnerving, but it's unforgettable. And in today's age of VR, AI, and genetic tinkering, its questions feel more relevant than ever. This isn't just sci-fi, it's an experience, one that lingers long after the credits fade. Trancers, 1984. Some cult films thrive on pure grit, and Trancers is the poster child for that scrappy charm. Directed by Charles Band, this low-budget gem mashes film noir with time travel in ways no one expected. It follows Jack Death, a trench-coated detective from the future, tasked with stopping a criminal who can manipulate ordinary people into mindless puppets known as Trancers. His mission? Chase the villain back through time, all the way to 1980 seconds Los Angeles. The twist? Jack doesn't physically travel. His consciousness is sent into the body of one of his ancestors. Suddenly, this hardened detective is navigating the neon streets of LA in a borrowed life. Actor Tim Thomerson brings Jack to life with gravel-voiced intensity and sharp one-liners, while a young Helen Hunt, in one of her first major roles, shines as his reluctant ally. Sure, the budget was thin, effects were basic, but that didn't stop the film from carving out a loyal fan base. It resonated with viewers who wanted Blade Runner atmosphere without Blade Runner heaviness. Critics ignored it, theaters barely noticed, but on VHS, Trancers exploded. Its cult status grew so strong, it spawned 5 sequels. Why does it still hold up? Because it's lean, fast, and unapologetically pulpy. Every scene pushes forward with energy. Jack Death might not be a household name, but in the world of forgotten 80-second sci-fi, he's a legend. Trancers proves you don't need blockbuster money to deliver a story that sticks. Sometimes, all you need is attitude. Explorers, 1985. Few films capture childhood imagination quite like Explorers. Directed by Joe Dante, this story follows 3 boys, played by Ethan Hawke, River Phoenix, and Jason Presson, who dream of traveling into space. Instead of just fantasizing, they actually do it. In their suburban garages, they cobble together scraps of tech, junkyard parts, and sheer determination to build a working spacecraft. And against all odds, they succeed. The ship, dubbed the Thunder Road, is anything but sleek. It looks like a giant patchwork of garbage cans and TV screens. But when it launches, it feels magical. The boys blast off into the skies, not with polished NASA precision, but with the raw thrill of kids daring to believe. Their journey takes them beyond Earth, into contact with life that is as absurd as it is wondrous. Here's the tragedy. Paramount rushed the film into theaters before Joe Dante could finish editing. Worse, it came out the same week as Back to the Future. Audiences never stood a chance to notice it, and it bombed. For years, it remained buried. But rewatch it today, and it radiates heart. Ethan Hawke and River Phoenix deliver youthful sincerity, and the film itself feels like a love letter to dreaming big. It's messy, yes, but it's bursting with imagination. Explorers isn't just about building a ship, it's about remembering what it was like to believe anything was possible. That feeling never gets old. Cherry 20001987. What if your perfect partner wasn't human? That's the question at the heart of Cherry 2000, one of the strangest yet most oddly prophetic sci-fi films of the 80 seconds. The story follows Sam Treadwell, who lives in a futuristic society where android companions are common. When his beloved Cherry 2000 model malfunctions, he refuses to accept a replacement. Instead, he hires a tracker named E. Johnson, played by Melanie Griffith, to guide him across a lawless wasteland in search of the exact model he lost. It sounds wild and Island. The movie blends Mad Max-style landscapes with a romantic undercurrent that questions what love really means. Is devotion to something artificial less real than love for a person? Can longing for perfection blind us to something genuine standing right beside us? Upon release, critics brushed it aside. Audiences barely noticed. But years later, it found a second life on late-night cable and home video. Suddenly, people saw its strange brilliance. The world-building is colorful, Griffith's performance is electric, and the entire film feels like a parable disguised as pulp. Today, it feels eerily ahead of its time, hinting at conversations we're having now about technology, relationships, and what counts as authentic connection. Cherry 2000 may have looked disposable in the 80 seconds, but rewatch it now and you'll see the opposite. It's a forgotten film that asks timeless questions. Slipstream 1989. Now here's a forgotten experiment that deserved better. Directed by Steven Lisberger, the mind behind Tron, Slipstream imagined a world reshaped by unstoppable winds. Roads are gone, cities are broken, Humanity's survival depends on navigating the skies, riding air currents called slipstreams. It's a brilliant concept, and the cast is stacked. Mark Hamill, Bill Paxton, and Bob Peck headline this post-apocalyptic adventure. The story follows a mysterious fugitive, Peck, pursued by a relentless lawman, Hamill, and a cocky smuggler, Paxton. Together, they crisscross a shattered Earth where flight is both lifeline and danger. The aerial sequences are breathtaking, with planes and gliders soaring through vast canyons, carried by invisible rivers of air. But Slipstream was doomed before it could shine. Production troubles gutted its budget, and distribution was so limited that barely anyone saw it. Released in only a handful of theaters, it evaporated almost instantly. And yet, those who stumble across it today see something haunting. Hamill flips his Luke Skywalker image to play a hardened enforcer. Paxton injects the film with his trademark charisma. And the world itself, half primitive, half futuristic, lingers in memory. Slipstream is a failure, yes, but a fascinating one. It dared to dream of skies instead of streets, and that alone makes it unforgettable. Brainstorm, 1983. Few films carry the weight of tragedy like Brainstorm. Directed by Douglas Trumbull, the visual genius behind 2001. A Space Odyssey, it stars Christopher Walken and Natalie Wood in a story about a revolutionary invention, a device that can record human experience and let others relive it. Imagine feeling someone else's joy, fear, or heartbreak exactly as they did. Now, imagine the consequences. At first, it seems miraculous. Scientists share skills, memories, even fleeting emotions. But once military interests get involved, the device becomes something darker. The climax, where Walken's character dares to explore death itself through the machine, remains one of the boldest endings of the Conocide decade. The film was nearly overshadowed by tragedy. Natalie Wood died during production, leaving speculation and sorrow in its wake. For years, that cloud hung over Brainstorm, distracting from the film itself. But step back from the headlines, and what you find is visionary sci-fi. Trumbull used experimental widescreen techniques, expanding the frame during the recorded experience sequences, making them feel immersive in ways years ahead of IMAX. The questions it asks about memory, mortality, and the hunger to transcend are still staggering today. Brainstorm may not have conquered the box office, but it holds up because it dared to ask something eternal. If you could step into another person's mind completely, would you? So, there you have it. 15 sci-fi movies from the 80 seconds that time tried to bury, but couldn't keep down. They weren't the hits, they weren't the sequels, and they weren't the safe bets. But decades later, they feel as alive as ever. Which of these have you seen, and which one are you adding to your watch list right now? Drop your thoughts below, hit subscribe, and share this with a fellow movie fan. The forgotten future still shines.